Hey y'all, welcome to My Way Mysteries, the channel that brings you interdimensional content, which means that the readings are from a broad and expansive point of view as they are channeled through vast dimensions of space and time and therefore should resonate with you guys whenever you come across them. So, guys, the gist of today's reading is actually going to be about the inner child. This concept of the inner child keeps coming up during like personal readings that I do, and it's coming up to the point where I feel like let me also do a collective reading that speaks to that energy because it feels like it's an energy on its own that's making its rounds with people right now, understandably so. It's like there seems to have been a part of your life that you kind of just, yes, so it's kind of like as you're going through these different aspects of your life that you are purifying or cleansing and balancing, there's this part where you kind of keep passing by it because you keep telling yourself, well, it's the past. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. A lot of you are very much about fixing, kind of like your adolescent. Um, Mental patterns that maybe put you in a state where your mental health deteriorated, or emotional patterns from your adolescent age that put you in a state where you were spiritually like not in a good place. And so in terms of childhood, there's this idea that, well, if it wasn't traumatic, that is to say, if it wasn't outright, like, then it's cool. We don't have to do, like, we don't have to look back at it. But there's certain characteristics of your childhood that keep coming up within your adulthood today. And it's because that child in you, that inner child, is obviously subconsciously still very much awake in you and in an agitated state. And it's an agitated state because there's certain things that that inner child dealt with that may not be classified today as a big deal, but that child is still trying to search for certain things. And that's why you may find yourself, even in your adulthood, doing certain things that you're like, I don't even know why I did that, or I don't know why that matters, or bringing up certain things in your relationship, in your jobs. This thing, for instance, in people where you constantly need affirmation from people around you or validation from people around you. It could stem from the fact that maybe as a child you were never told, well done. You were never told, good job, good work at a time, maybe as a child when you're expecting that because, you've done well at something and you're thinking, this is going to make my parents or whatever parental figures like so proud of me. And instead, they just looked past it. Not because they're bad people or they're pieces of shit, but because your adulting was getting to them as much as it's getting to you now. Maybe that day when you came back with your star on your 20 out of 20 test or whatever, that's the day like your mom realized "Tsholo pepi pelile," and like ngapha ninyami pelile, like, you know she has to pay for this or she has to pay for that, or she just realized maybe your parents were divorced and she realized like this is the part where she has to call someone else to help her, and she really doesn't want to do that. She really hates that. And it's not so much that she was not able to, or it's not so much that she didn't want to congratulate you, but there were other things on her mind. Or it can happen that your parent, your parental figure was just like, a piece of shit, where they were just like, man, who cares? Like, you're just a child. Who cares about your star and whatever? You know, there's some parents that just, while parenting you, forgot that they were once children, or maybe also didn't heal from the things that they did not receive as a child and feel like, yeah, and I made it. So you're also going to be okay, even if I don't give you this love, even if I don't give you this support, even if I don't give you this hug. So, yeah, sometimes you find yourself to be so wanting in your adult life of touch, of, like I said, constant reaffirming of, yes, I do love you. Yes, I've been with you for 7 years and I still want to be with you. Like, yes, you need that constant reaffirming, because it seems like it may happen as a child. Maybe with many siblings, you were the one that felt like, do you even see me? Do you even care about me? And some of you have trauma responses from your childhood that you don't even realize that you have. Your hyper independence may come from having to do a lot of things yourself as a child. You know, especially in, like, guys, our families, you know, like, life goes on so quickly. Your parents have to go to work, they have to do this. You start doing certain things at a young age, you know, like taking care of yourself, like at a young age. And it's weird. As soon as you start doing them, yes, that makes your parents feel like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to actually do this. They're able to do it themselves. It's something they actually brag about to their friends. Like, yeah, mina umntanami uyazenzela ukudla. That time, we're just talking about a 5-year-old. Bragging about, my kid makes his own food. My kid makes their own food. Like, boo, they're 6 though. Like, should they be making their own food? And the thing is, like I said, this is not out of some abusive tendency, but out of there not being enough hours for the in the day for this person, you know. For this is out of them having to worry about so many things that, like, have to do with just being a person in our society, but also having to worry about their mental health. Maybe they're in a relationship, maybe they're in a marriage with your father, or, you know, with your mother, whatever, the other way around, and they're worried about that. There's so many things as a child that you do not see, and we're not able to go back and fix those things. But there's certain trauma responses that we have from the ways in which we did overcome them in order to become who we are now. And there's a need to just massage that, like, out, to kind of, it's like drainage. If you've ever done an operation, like, you get drainage, and sometimes there's just a need to just massage that out, just let it go. You're still holding some fluid from that time in your life, and it makes your inner child angsty. And that's why you can't settle in a relationship and just feel safe, other than the fact that you intuitively know that you might be with the wrong person. If that's the case, some of you are with the right people. Some of you are actually with the right people, but your own anxieties, besides, you might be thinking they stem from previous relationships, but you were the same in the previous relationship. It stems from a younger version of yourself. I don't know why, but I'm getting how some of you as children had deep fears of your parents passing. So it was really important for you to, like, when, if your parent came home like 5 minutes after they were supposed to, you were in an anxious state because you were really just scared of losing your parent. Some of you had parents that used to fight in front of you, that used to argue in front of you. And it put you in a position where it felt like it was your responsibility to make your parents happy, where you might have even felt like it's your fault, maybe, that they're fighting, or if they ended up splitting, you might have felt like that was your fault. Maybe that's something you didn't do. So you took on this thing to always perform for adults, to always make sure adults are happy when they're with you. And so even now as an adult, like there's some things that you feel like they're unfair when it comes to your relationship with the parental figure, but you still do it because that inner child is still there, having not processed certain emotions, in which you don't realize that you are an adult now. You're the one that has to speak to this child within you and say to her, hey, come here. You know how you felt as though this was your fault? This wasn't your fault. It happens. In life, sometimes adults do certain things and it's not right. And, being able to sit with yourself and say things like, you were a really smart kid. And the only reason why this person didn't see that is because their plate was full. But that doesn't negate the fact that you were a really special kid and you're still a special kid and you've become a special adult. So it's okay. Like, it just allows you to maybe take yourself out of the situation where you constantly feel like you need other people's validation for the talents that you have. I think it also speaks to the reading I did yesterday about how Pluto in Aquarius brings a lot of stability within the self, and being able to be oneself even when you're alone, especially when you're alone. That is to say, not needing an audience to keep validating the things you do within your life, not needing validation for how beautiful you are, how smart you are, how organized you are, what a great parent you are, what a great partner you are, what a great teacher you are, what a great student you are. It brings this ability to be a good enough witness for yourself, to not need other people to witness your greatness, because it's still greatness even when it is not witnessed. It doesn't change the fact that it is greatness. And the healing of the inner child is a big part of that, because children have certain needs. That's just what it is. There's nothing like, oh, this child requires too much attention. A child within itself requires attention. That is just the characteristic of a child. A child requires to be seen. A child requires a lot of energy. And yes, sometimes the people around you were not able to pour that type of energy or that amount of energy into you. And that's why, as an adult, you've connected to other aspects of yourself that are able to do that. If you're not able to do what I'm saying, or you don't even know where you would start, because basically what I'm telling you is that you have to be the parent of your inner child. If you're not able to do that, I need you to sit with your spiritual counsel, be it your ancestors, be it your higher self, and ask them for help with this, because they've been with that child the whole time up to this version of yourself. And you may not be able to connect to that child or your inner child because of certain things maybe you're trying to forget from your childhood, or rather just feeling as though, like, no, that child is fine, that child is fine, which, by the way, may also be a trauma response. Where you had to be fine. I'm just fine in order to get through everything, in order to get to the part of the story where you were able to get a job, take care of yourself, and do your own thing and not need anybody. Some of you, that's why you're so obsessed with independence, because people failed at taking care of you. So you just waited for the growing up phase so that you could finally take care of yourself and not depend on anyone. Do you see what I mean? There's just a lot to it. But um I would advise you to sit with your spiritual team, be it your ancestors, be it your higher self, and just ask them to help you mend this relationship between the child version of yourself and the world. Some of you get really anxious when you have to do certain things in front of people. Even at work, when you have to present in front of other people, you get really anxious and you think it's just stage fright, but it could have something to do with, it could be something that happened in your childhood, something about being afraid of people and thinking people will always judge you, or thinking it may have started in family gatherings or something. But yeah, that's feeling a bit, looking at like one person out there. But yes, the point is that talk to your spiritual counsel and get them to just, point you in the right direction. Because also, some of you may still be perpetuating the same behavior that you learned, or the same behavior that you received from parental figures that you actually don't want. But the thing is, it was programmed into you to not only treat you yourself like that, but to also maybe treat your children like that. Or ultimately still treat yourself like that even as an adult. Like, you don't allow yourself to explain yourself. If someone shouts at you, someone who's in a space of authority based on what society says, this could be a boss. If you're a woman, it could be a husband. It could be like, if you're a woman, it could be a boyfriend. Like, whatever it is that society says this person is a state of authority, like, you may feel like you're not allowed to talk back, you're not allowed to show emotions of anger, you're not allowed to show emotions of what the fuck is this, you're not allowed to question. And you've taken that template from being a child, like, and having an adult say that to you, like, don't talk back to me. Or an adult that never used to explain their discipline but would just inflict it. And so you're kind of realizing this wasn't even discipline, this actually was abuse. What the fuck is this? So yeah, some of you treat yourselves the way parental figures treated you, and you don't even realize this treatment was not okay. This treatment was unfair. So now I want to speak to those people who, like, that your childhood was like really unfair. So these are the kids that, like, I'm getting scapegoat. Remember we spoke about that, like, kids where you may have had narcissistic parents or parent who would do certain, like, would play certain mind games, like, yes, like, some adults are wild, bro. Like, so the scapegoat thing is like, maybe it hardly happens when you're an only child. It actually mostly happens when you have like siblings. So what happens is that this parent will, also maybe speak about you to your siblings, like, behind your back. And it's like, the reason why you're a scapegoat is because you are ultimately different from the others. So the fact that your family may be dysfunctional, you are able to see that, and you tend to point out the dysfunction within your family. Like, why do you speak to uh, this one like this and me like this? And sometimes you even protect your siblings and you're like, no, don't do that, that's not right, and blah 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 blah, right? Like, you're just able to point out that maybe an adult is acting in a way that's not right, like, that's not okay, and blah blah blah. And the adult, because of their narcissistic template, tends to really not like you, because who the fuck you think you are? But the thing is, at the end of the day, you're a child. But basically what happens is that this coalition forms around you where you become the scapegoat for everything that's going wrong or the dysfunction within the family somehow. And it can go right up into you guys growing up, even as adults, where you will constantly be looked at as the one on the outside, the ostracized one. But that's not what this is about, particularly. But I'm speaking to that one in the family. I think they call you the black sheep. I'm speaking to that one. And it's to say, as much as this reading was about people going back and looking back at their inner child because they were not able to like solve certain things, you've been solving your childhood even from the point of being a child. Like I said, you were able to take note of the dysfunction within your family, and that's actually how you kind of became the scapegoat. And you no longer need to look back. So for you, it's not like the ones I was speaking to in the beginning of the reading, where you need to balance out your inner child. For you, I want to say you have balanced out your inner child. Your inner child is in a good place. You were able to fully understand the dynamics that occurred within your family, be it through therapy, be it through channels like this, and you were able to put together parts of yourself that may have shattered when you were in a child state. And there's this union between the version of yourself that you are now and the child version of yourself where you're on a good level of understanding. You are a parent. You have become the parent that your inner child or the child version of you needed all those years ago, which is to say, you have healed the parts of need and the parts of want of the child version of yourself. Your child version is no longer wanting, is no longer weeping, is no longer in a state of void. You have been able to balance out all the situations and the occurrences that happen. I mean, it wasn't that hard because, like I said, no, I'm sorry. I don't mean like it was easy or whatever, but what I was trying to say is that they didn't just happen in your childhood, they kept reoccurring in your adulthood. And, so these people didn't stop. With the scapegoat, it tends to be like that. They do not stop. These people will be 50 years old and still doing this. Like, this is your siblings, right? Your parents will be 90 and still doing this, but you were able to stop the cycle. The scapegoat does tend to be the cycle breaker within the family, if they're able to balance out the things that have happened within themselves, within their heart space, which obviously involves seeing the situation from a higher perspective, which is to say, it's not just to say, you're a narcissist, you're to blame, and you guys are all pansies, and you're just affiliates of the narcissist because you're all little narcissists yourself. It's not, I mean, you do go through that part, which is obviously the anger of everything that happened to you. And that's also what I like about this state. It's because you've gone through the stages of grief. Because you do need to grieve. You do need to grieve the fact that your family, like, unit or situation was not the way that it was supposed to be, based even on the template that society gave you. And there's anger towards society for, why did you even give me this fucking template if I have this dysfunctional family that wasn't able to complete that template, and then I just spent a lot of my time alone and wanting and reaching and never getting, and what the fuck. But there's healing. You're experiencing healing. And so for you, the first part of the reading was like a past situation, I suppose, like you just looking back, or me rounding it up for you and putting it in a nice little box and saying, you're done. You did it. You are no longer running at a risk of repeating the cycle with your own children or even with just other people that you meet. You are no longer running the risk of sabotaging yourself because your inner child is still wanting and still needing. Instead, you have become this thoughtful, loving, supportive parent to yourself. That's why you're able to talk yourself into situations that are loving and beautiful, and talk yourself out of situations that are toxic and not balanced and not for you. You now understand that saying of when love is not being served, you walk away because you know what that looks like. But you don't just feed on that situation because it's a cycle that you're used to. You were able to learn from that, so you're able to perceive the situation and choose better for yourself. um and you're able to properly articulate yourself in the situations, like be it relationships or friendships or any partnerships. You're able to articulate so well how this is not working for you, why it's not working for you, and what this means. And if a situation is working for you, when you are fulfilled, when all your boxes are being ticked, you are able to articulate yourself in that way too. You're able to articulate your appreciation for being seen, for being heard, your appreciation for being supported, and the appreciation of a space where you're able to be exactly who you are and not be someone else in order to hopefully gain favor from a person that says they love you but needs you to tap dance for that love. Yeah, the version of yourself that was broken or that was shattered from not receiving a higher frequency of parenting when you were a child is like, boo, it's healed. Like, it's healed. And maybe healed is like scary for people to hear, because I know that for when you've like received long-term traumatic experiences, it's hard for you to be told you're good now, you can leave the hospital, like you can go back into the world. I think it's kind of like being in rehab for a while and then coming out and just being afraid, are you going to be able to sustain the same amount of abstinence that you did inside the rehab center, like outside? But like, I want to tell you that you are going to be able to. Because what you don't realize is that you didn't just change on a surface level. You didn't just do work on a surface level. You did work on such a deep level that your reality is going to change. You're no longer carrying the burden. You've got the 10 of Wands and the 10 of Swords. You're no longer carrying the burdens carried by the people who hurt you. You're no longer carrying the burden of being the victim of certain people. You just have this understanding that allows you to be in a space of seeing that certain people are just programmed in a certain way. And it is for us to expand our consciousness and transcend certain programming and not let it capture you and keep you in a certain low vibrational state. You have this understanding of nature and how it occurs and how it's not personal. And the fact that you were able to free a version of yourself from this way of thinking and this way of being, like, you won. You won. So yeah, that's what I have for you guys today. If the reading resonated, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to book a personal reading, all the information is in the description box. If you want to book a mentorship session, all the information is in the description box. Cool, y'all.